right, so welcome and thank you for signing on to today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and put up our slides. All right, so thank you for joining today's webinar, Planning and Implementing a Training Program. My name is Rachel Bazinski. I'm one of the program managers for the National Volunteer Fire Council, and I will be your moderator today. Today's webinar is sponsored by our friend and partner, California Casualty. Stay tuned for the end of the session. We are going to be holding a drawing today for one of two $100 Visa gift cards provided by California Casualty. So I'd like to invite Tanya Rigsby, the Accounts Relations Manager for California Casualty, on to just say hello. Tanya?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. We at California Casualty are proud to sponsor this very informative webinar provided to you by NVFC. California Casualty has been providing auto and home insurance to firefighters for 45 years, and we have been a corporate sponsor of the NVFC since 2011. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tanya. We're glad to have you here today. I have a few more quick notes before we start today's presentation. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our virtual classroom site at virtualclassroom.nvfc.org, which I will put in the chat box a bit later. We will also have a Q&A session following the presentation. You can submit questions at any time using the Q&A tool below or in the chat box. For anyone unfamiliar with the NVFC, we are the leading nonprofit membership association representing the interests of the volunteer fire, EMS, and rescue services. We serve as the voice of the volunteer in the national arena and provide invaluable resources for first responders across the nation. If you're not an NVFC member, you can join today for just $18 a year. Our member benefits include a $10,000 AD&D insurance policy, free online training through our virtual classroom and Target Solutions, a new platform for online operational courses for first responders, access to the member community, volunteer voices, and educational discounts to online universities and fire service training. It also includes eligibility for special programs such as our Globe Gear giveaway and educational scholarships, and these free webinars for both members and non-members that benefit the fire service. So you can support us by becoming a member so that we can continue to bring all these benefits to you. And you can learn more and join at nvfc.org/join, and I will also put that in the chat box. So this is just a brief overview of our agenda today. So first we will go over to one of our instructors for an overview, then move on to training during COVID-19, and then move into our discussion. Now I'm happy to introduce our speakers for today. So Mr. Ken Fontenot is the National Volunteer Fire Council's Louisiana Director and Chair of the NVFC Health and Safety Committee. He is a curriculum manager and developer for the Louisiana State University Fire and Emergency Training Institute and a past president of the Louisiana State Firemen's Association. Also with us, we have Jason DeKramer. He is the Director of Certification for the Connecticut Commission on Fire Prevention and Control. He is responsible for over 40 levels of national certification testing for approximately 25,000 firefighters statewide. He has been a member of the Volunteer Fire Service for over 20 years and has served as a Chief Officer and Recruitment Retention Coordinator. He is also an instructor with the IFC Volunteer Workforce Solutions Group, teaching recruitment and retention nationwide. I will now turn it over to our instructors.
All right, thank you, Rachel. I'm ready to go. So am I good just to share my screen and we're all set? Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning from our West Coast friends. This afternoon, I'm going to present a very brief overview of the planning and implementing a training program that's available on the NVFC virtual classroom. So as a member, you'll have access to not only to this program, but to a number of different programs that are on the in the virtual classroom system, and it's well worth your time to go through and take the classes that are there. So the program discusses a number of different areas, and the overall outcomes of a training program are that we want to have trained personnel. We want to have personnel that have the essential skills mastered. And I always use an old a saying from Vince Lombardi, who's a Green Bay Packer football coach, who said that perfect practice makes perfect. Not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So his players did not leave the training ground, the football field, until they had mastered the skills. And then in his view, they were ready to play on Sunday. So that is an outcome. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice, but that should all be one of our goals. We have mandated trainings that most of us have to address each year, whether those be state requirements or OSHA requirements, because our states fall under OSHA. We have things that need to get done each and every year. Last year, 2020, made that a little more challenging with COVID, but those things still need to get done. And then we want to make sure our members are satisfied. One of the easiest things to do as a training coordinator is to ask the members if there's any areas specifically they want to work on. I think you'll find in a lot of cases they have areas that they feel like they're not proficient in, and those are good opportunities to take advantage of. And then it's also important to use our time efficiently. As instructors, we have to be prepared. We have to be ready to go. We have to have a backup plan, maybe even 2 backup plans in case the original plan fails. We're volunteers. We're coming from work. We're coming from home, and we want to make sure that our time is used effectively. So there are a number of reasons for training. The full program goes over these in detail. This is just a highlight slide, really. There are department deficiencies that we need to improve upon. There are new techniques, technologies, and equipment that come out all the time. A lot of that information you can find, especially with new techniques, in trade journals. Those are good resources to look at. There's the aforementioned mandated training, and then there's also rating bureau requirements that some of us have to meet based on our jurisdictions. Overall, we have several goals for our training programs. First and foremost, we need our members. We want our members to be safe. So safety, teaching safety is very important. Also, there's a number of different areas on this list: fire behavior, PPE, ladders is always an area that a lot of departments say they need work on, just because of the infrequency in throwing ladders, or the infrequency of structure fires. So those are skills to work on, as is forcible entry. Building construction, we know, has changed a lot over the last few years. Our homes are more airtight than they were. Building materials are more flammable than they were 10, 15 years ago. So learning about building construction, which applies, of course, to fire hose, appliances, and streams, and strategy and tactics that we use at fires, is all important. So this is a good list to reference, to look at, and maybe begin to build your training program off of. There are a lot of different areas you can focus on with this list. Half a dozen or more training areas and training programs you can develop or teach your firefighters during one of your sessions. There are a lot of resources out there for instructors, and one of the highlights of the program is that we focus on the areas that are there. Instructors are not alone. It's just a matter of looking and digging for the resources that are there. NFPA 1041 is the national standard for fire service instructor qualification. It's separated into 3 levels: instructor 1, 2, and 3. Instructor 1 focuses on teaching an individual how to teach and instruct from a prepared lesson plan. Instructor 2 is about building a lesson plan, so creating a lesson plan, the PowerPoint slides, the quizzes, course evaluations, PowerPoint slides. And Instructor 3 is designed for individuals who end up managing a training program or a training division. It's also important that we have the ability to teach. Anybody can take Instructor 1, but not necessarily everybody is ready to teach at that point. So being able to teach is one thing. You also have to bring your experience to the table. And one of the greatest things about a volunteer fire department is there's a lot of experience in many different areas that walks through the door, whether it be a individual that works for a chemical company that would have experience and knowledge in hazardous materials, a truck driver that would have experience with operating heavy equipment potentially. There's a lot of areas to look at. So use those folks, use those people to teach those areas that they're comfortable in and they have experience in. These are some of the resources that are out there that are available to you as you build a training program. Reach out to all of these book vendors. The primary ones in the fire service that we use are Jones & Bartlett and IFSTA, but there are others. There's equipment vendors all over the nation, locally, in every state that you should become familiar with. Reach out to your insurance companies, national organizations such as this one. Of course, the internet and trade journals are all out there. So use all of these resources to work on your training programs, create your training programs, and develop them out as you're planning. One of the areas we talk about in the program is developing a training calendar for an entire year. So sitting down and coming up with a 12-month list of training. It doesn't mean that that is going to stick. There are things that happen and schedules that have to be adjusted. But if you can share with your members a training program for a year in January and let them know this is what's planned, then they can plan their lives and events around that and make that accessible to them. So that's something to shoot for as a goal each year, is to plan out your training in a 12-month calendar. It's really important to train with those we respond with. A lot of volunteer departments do mutual aid, auto aid on a regular basis. And so as much training as we can do within our own organizations is important, but it's also important, if possible, to train with our mutual aid partners, our mutual aid agencies, especially those that we have automatic aid agreements with that we work with all the time. So reach across town community lines and do 1 or 2 programs a year if you can with your mutual aid departments. And then there are larger departments that may have resources that smaller departments don't, such as training grounds. They could have props, a forcible entry prop, or a burn simulator, for instance, or a lot of other unique facilities that are around. So take advantage of those things if you can. Contact your state training agencies as well and see what they have available that can be used. There are a lot of mobile props out there that you can be delivered to your department relatively cheaply, certainly more cheaply than purchasing it, and get that stuff there. You know, one of the things that members want to do is train in things they haven't seen before, and it's always exciting to see a burn trailer roll in, or a forcible entry prop or something like that that the members haven't been able to use yet. You'll get a good program out of those things. And then there's the grant program. So this is timely in that we are just finishing AFG, ends tomorrow. The fire prevention and safety grant closes in a couple weeks, and especially important for volunteer departments is the SAFER grant, which opened on Monday and closes on March 12th. And that program is designed, has a specific section to it for volunteer fire departments for recruitment and retention of members over a 3 to 4 year period. It's an excellent grant program. It's something you should all be looking at. It's highly competitive. They typically only only hand out about 300 a year. So you need some good narrative writing to be done here, but it's well worth the effort to look into if you're concerned, as many departments are, about recruitment and retention over the next 5 to 10 years. And then there are other state agency programs as well, civic organizations. You have department stores in some communities like Lowe's or Home Depot that could provide lumber to you for something you need to build. All those things that are available for you to look at. So it's really important to know that, going back a couple slides ago, is that we are not alone in this as training officers. Maybe only one or two of us in a department, but there's a lot of help out there available. It's just a matter of reaching out and finding it. Scheduling training, of course, is a challenge in volunteer fire departments based on work schedules, based on schedules with sporting events with kids and all kinds of other things that happen. So it's important to, when you're setting a calendar up, to look at how you're going to break the schedule up. Do you do it all on a weeknight? Do you do it all on the weekends? Time of year is also something you have to consider for the type of training you want to do. Obviously, cold water training doesn't work well in July in most cases. So plan all that out, your frequency, your length of your class, the day of the week, nighttime versus daytime, time of year, all that is really important. Take those things into account. You know, obviously, based on when you do it, could have an effect on how many people are able to attend. But you need to look at several areas when you're scheduling your training programs. And these are just some basic drills that you can start to plan out that really don't take a whole lot of time to do. They're sort of down and dirty, quick drills, but they're highly effective. This is an initial fire attack drill, which splits your group up into 2-member teams. It's about 1 minute if you dress out in a pumper, maybe 3 minutes if you dress out on scene. You might teach your hose layout as an S or a Z pattern, or bringing the first coupling up to the front door and stretching it straight back, however you do it. One person would bring a thermal camera, one person would bring an axe or a Halligan. There's of course no running, we want to be safe. And a 5-second penalty for unsafe action. So you could set this drill up as sort of a contest in 2-member teams and practice these very basic but essential skills, which is deploying that initial attack line. And then we also have one here that goes over ladder and SCBA. So again, 2-member teams. In this case, we're talking about removing a 24-foot extension ladder. We're raising it at a designated location. One member would heel it, one member would climb it. Again, no running, maybe top it off with a roof ladder, and you can have a penalty in there for unsafe actions or improper PPE or improper ladder raising. Again, quick, easy drills you can do on a weeknight or a weekend, and get the blood flowing and the skill level up. And then we have a static water supply for those agencies out there that don't have hydrants everywhere. This again is a 2-member team, PPE, but no SCBA. 3 minutes or so to set up a draft site, attach the intake hose, lay out 2 50-foot lengths of supply hose. Time stops when drafting is accomplished, and a 5-second penalty for unsafe acts. So these are just a few examples of some of the trainings that you can set up on a weeknight, weekend, on a work night, whenever you have the opportunity to do it. And there's a lot of area to cover. There's a lot of ground to cover. But master the skills. That's the key to the whole thing. Be creative, be safe. We never want to hurt anybody. We want to make every day a training day. Even after we return from a run, there's a training involved in that. There's a lesson to be learned from that. There's how could we have done this better? You will perform as you have trained. So that goes back to Lombardi's perfect practice makes perfect. And train until you can't do it wrong. It's unconscious competence. Be the firefighter you want to come to your emergency. I love that. That's a very key point, is that providing the best customer service that we can. And if we go out and talk to our communities, a lot of them don't know that we're volunteer firefighters. They call 911 and they expect a fire truck to pull up with professionally competent people. And that's what we need to strive to provide them. All right, that is an overview of the program, and I will pass off my screen, hopefully. There we go.
And Jason, you done with your your overview and the slides for right now?
I am, sir, yes.
Okay, good. My name is Ken Fontenot, and I am the state director for the NVFC from Louisiana and have been for the past 16 years. I was also the first fire chief in our fire department when it was formed, 30 some odd years ago. A very small, typical tall grass mud puddle volunteer fire department. And just so happened this past Tuesday, our state agency provided a Zoom class statewide, and I went to the fire department to act as a student and see how it was received. Because in today's COVID environment that we're having to deal with, this is something we wanted to try out and see how it was received with firefighters throughout the state. So we've piloted 4 of the first Zoom classes. They're non-hands-on, obviously, for various reasons. And I've heard of some states having used similar things, but have done hands-on classes as well. So with the COVID epidemic and the social distancing and people not really wanting to get out and mingle, we have to be very, very creative in how we continue to train our people that are within our department, and then provide entry-level training for new people, because we always have new people coming in. And if we say, hey, we don't know when we can start training again, they're going to walk away. We may have lost an opportunity to keep some recruits that are looking and knocking on our doors. So as a provider of training in your department, utilizing some sort of a teleeducation system, whether it's a Zoom platform, question, or whatever platform you use, might be the ticket. You could probably partner with area fire departments and share either the costs or share the training. 4 or 5 folks who are trainers get together and, hey, I'm going to teach this Tuesday night, and I've got the Tuesday night following. It is a very, very economical way to reach people. They don't typically have to come to the fire station, but they can train from their home. Maybe if they're working at a location that will allow them to do it, they could possibly train from that location where they're working. So it opens a lot of opportunities to people who perhaps don't want to come out and mingle because of the COVID epidemic that we have going on, or perhaps your own organization doesn't encourage people to do that. I understand as well, but we still have to go out and do our training when we do it. So as Jason pointed out earlier, there are a lot of resources available to any fire department. If you're looking for a particular topic and don't have a training program on it, you can absolutely go into the internet and probably find a PowerPoint or at least a PDF instructor guide on any of these things. And it's not like when I first was chief, when there was very, very little available to small departments. We depended a lot on state training agencies to come out and do some of our training. We couldn't afford to buy programs. I can remember one of our vendors having a tape library that I would get tapes from, and they would send them to me, and I would do the tapes in the class and send them back to them. It was a very awkward and bulky system, but it was sure a lot better than nothing. And in today's IT world, where everything is at our fingertips through the internet, there's absolutely no excuse whatsoever for not having a good training program. I cannot be convinced of that. There are resources available, as Jason pointed out earlier. And even with the COVID that we're dealing with and the inability of doing some of the things that we have done in the past, being creative, we can still accomplish an awful lot. If you look at some of the things that are available for you, if you want to build a small prop, Go on the internet. There are designs for you. And one of the reasons I put some of the vendors up there is they're generally very happy to support their local organization. Going back to teleeducation, one of the things that we have found or finding out now, we partnered with the NFFF, National Fallen Firefighter Foundation, and they are going to provide several classes for us, which is very unique. They don't even have to send an instructor, which they like because it's the first for them. So in April, they will provide probably the LAC class, and we're excited about having it. They're excited about doing it. And when they've seen the numbers we're able to reach out to, they're just really, really wanting to get into this market. So if you have an advocate that you know of in your state, talk to them about presenting teleeducation, and don't limit it to just these types of organizations. As an example, starting next week, I will be providing training to some company officers in Rhode Island. We've got 6 weeks scheduled of officer development training. And I'm a long ways from Rhode Island, I want to tell you. And without the teleeducation abilities we have today, that just wouldn't happen. So there are a lot of opportunities, even though we may not be getting together in the bricks and mortar like we used to at the firehouse. There are ways we can do it. I've talked to some training officers who, to the best of their abilities, have practiced social distancing even with hands-on training. Getting one person to do the 2-minute drill, maintaining the distance that they feel comfortable with as per their guidelines after they did a teleeducation class on the bare bones basics like you normally would do. So being creative is something that will enhance and give the ability to your organization to continue to do all of the training that you need to. Some of the things are going to be a little bit more difficult, such as your driver training and your apparatus training. But even then, you can do the learning part of the class remotely, and then you could bring a one-on-one situation over to your organization. Have one person work on the pump panel, one person drive the truck. Just be sure to sanitize the equipment when you're finished between students. This is just the normal way that we have to do business today. And normal being that we have to sanitize everything we put our hands on and keep it as clean as we possibly can. One thing I'd like to point out to you, those of you who are maybe thinking that this pandemic is going to pass, I would be very, very conservative in saying that we need to plan on this being around for a while. And I was on a call last month, I guess it was, where they were wanting to do something. And they said, as soon as this is over, we're going to do it. And the suggestion was do it now because this is not going to be over in a while. So if you've been kind of hanging fire to get your training program kicked back up when COVID goes away, I would suggest that you take a long, hard look at it and plan for these things to be around for a while. Later this month, one of the states has an officer training program. Bryant Stiles, who used to be a NVFC director from Kentucky, his officer school, it will be done by teleeducation for the first time. And it's a relatively large school. There's about 850 students that attend this. So by necessity, they couldn't bring everybody into Kentucky, the instructors or the students. It will be done by teledistancing. And one of the things that happened there is there are people from out of state who normally wouldn't attend the class who would be attending this class. So look for those opportunities for your own organization. Cast about the other states and see who's doing some teleeducation classes and how you can maybe get your group into it. Not everybody has to register. Maybe one person has to register and the rest can sit in the station and observe it. Another great way is to join the NVFC or other organizations that have libraries of stored webinars such as this one. the full program that this one was piloted after. And those are some opportunities on your drill nights where you can get together or people can individually go and do them. I think right now we have over 60 programs that are available in the library for members to access. And there's some very, very valid and good training programs in there, not only from the training aspect of this one, but there's some on driver training and on safety, on wellness and health. There's some officer development program. I think the incident safety officer is still on there, and a variety, and I'm sure there's quite a few of them that are still up there on the cancer awareness and prevention. So there are still a lot of opportunities for us to conduct training regardless of the type of department, whether it's fully volunteer, combination, or even career departments, where you can do this by distance learning or teleeducation. So I'm going to ask Jason if he has any further comments. That's pretty much what I was wanting to cover. And I believe we also want to open it up to anyone who has questions. If you have a chat question or a Q&A question, we'll answer them. And I think Ms. Rachel's kind of monitoring if she can tell us what the questions are. We'll get on that. So Jason, things I might have missed or you want to cover again, please?
No, you covered all that stuff. I'm agreeing with you, Ken. I think COVID is here to stay, and we're going to have to adjust to it, not necessarily vice versa. So if it means changing how we traditionally have delivered some of our topics, whether that be through an online mechanism, Target Solutions, or some program like that for some of our things, we have to use those areas more frequently. That's a very good possibility.
You know, and one thing I'd like to just expand on just for a second, I'll turn to Ms. Rachel, is one morning I was sitting next to Chief Bruncini from Phoenix. He was doing a seminar, and I just happened to get there early, and I went and said to him, I said, "Chief, you mind if I sit with you and visit?" And he said, "No, I don't." I said, "Sir, maybe you could help me." I said, "I'm looking for a term to encourage firefighters at whatever job skill they have to train until they can't do it wrong." I said, "I don't like expert. I don't like competent. I don't like SME." I said, "Do you have anything in mind that we could actually say, hey, when you can do it in this manner, you know your job?" And he thought about it for about 2 seconds, and he came up with, how about unconscious competence? So I'd love to say this was my brainchild, but it was certainly not anything to do with it. It was Chief Bruncini, and some of the best words of wisdoms that I could ever get. So whatever your job skill, if you're a firefighter, you're a driver operator, you're a company officer, a leader, or a manager at the fireground, if you can do that position, fill those position skills, and do it unconsciously competent. For instance, I like to blindfold my truck operators, my pump operators, and have them operate the truck blindfolded. You have to know which lever is where on that truck to pull whatever. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, just take a picture of the pump panel, and through the magic of Word or whatever, use some whiteout blocks and cover all the block. This lever is for the first pre-connect. Block all those out and then have them pencil them in. And if they get it wrong, make them go out and study it again and come back and give it to them again. There's a lot of little ways where you can really become unconsciously competent and do your job so that you don't even have to think about it. Thank you, Chief Bruncini, for that. Ms. Rachel, we have any questions or chats that we need to address?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And we did have a few questions come up. I know Jason's been answering some in the chat box and in the Q&A section, but I'll go ahead and read them and you guys can answer. I know we have a few people on the phone calling in. So just one administrative note, a few people were asking about certificates and video links. So I will email those out to everyone. You should expect that by tomorrow with the video and slide links and certificate. And we will also be putting that in our Volunteer Voices platform. There was one attendee comment. They said, "We have used online training and webinars from trade magazines and e-learning from McNeil," just speaking to the variety of resources that you were mentioning people can utilize. So one of the questions, Jason, I know you had answered this in the chat, was Why is no running a hard and fast rule? Should people be able to do running, jogging as part of training?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all about safety first, right? We don't want to get anybody hurt on the training ground. So, I think the comment was in the box, and it was very good. Walk before you run. That's certainly true. But there's a lot of safety issues that come up with, say, running with a 24-foot extension ladder. We just got to be careful with that. There's challenges there. So be careful in what you do, and I'm not going to advocate 100% for it or against it, but it's always safety first. Where are you? Where's the training taking place? Is the ground level? Is it not? Although there's a lot of factors that have to come in. The last thing we want to do as training officers is write an injury report that goes to the fire chief.
Yeah, I'm with Jason on that, being a safety conscious person as a chief and as a trainer. And I was in training for 30 years. We never want to hurt. To me, it's unconscionable to hurt somebody in training. Accidents do happen, I get this, but just because we allow unsafe activities, such as running on the fire ground, running with a tool, running with a piece of equipment, that's why we penalize. Also, we penalize for not having properly put your hood up or your gloves on or whatever. Now, firefighters are basically very, very competitive. And when I would do these drills, either the IFAT drills or some of the other drills, being from Louisiana, it gets hot and ugly down here. I would buy ice cream, and the winning team got the ice cream, and I'd buy sufficient ice cream for everybody. And it was up to the winning team whether or not they would share. We always had a lot of fun, but it got very competitive. That's where the no running part was very. We really monitored that very much. We wanted to do it quickly and efficiently, effectively, but also safely. And running was something we didn't want to have.
There's no life safety issue on a training ground, typically. So if it's on scene, is totally different and potentially, but typically we don't have a life safety on a training ground.
Well, that segues into our next question very well, Ken. We had a question about how to encourage training and attendance, and how do you enforce going to trainings with attendees? So in addition to ice cream, do you have any suggestions?
I try to make it a matter of pride. And in one of the bullets that Jason read, it said, be the firefighter you want to have come to your own emergency. To me, that's a matter of pride. If I show up on the scene and I don't have a clue as to what my job is, or how to do it because I'm untrained and don't want to go, but I just want to show up. To me, I tried to get that sense of pride in being a firefighter and convincing them that when you show up, maybe you thought you could rely on somebody else on the scene, but what if it's just you? And if you don't know how to do that job and somebody has a poor outcome because you refuse to go to training, that's sort of my driving mechanism. Now, I'll also say I was somewhat of a hard-nosed fire chief. It was plain and simple in my book. Either you trained or you went home. It didn't matter to me. I would rather have a small group of well-trained people than a large group with only a small group of well-trained people and a lot of others getting in my way. Now, that may be a hard pill that some people have swallowed. My guys really stepped up to the plate. The firefighters in our department stepped up. They all became certified. We were, I thought, a very, very conscientious and provided good service to our rural community. I think a lot of that comes from the leadership. And if you accept less than what maybe is needed, that's sort of on you. And it may be hard to tell somebody that's been there 10 years and all of a sudden they decide, well, I know everything. I don't want to come to training. All I want to do is make calls. You got to figure out how to motivate them, either appeal to their sense of seniority and that they're leaders, or maybe you might just have to cut ties with them. Jason, do you have any comments or areas on that? You probably run across.
I was going to say exactly what you did. If the leadership buys into a training program, and in some cases, some elements of that being mandatory, then that's what needs to happen. The leaders have to buy into that. If you have 100 people in your fire department that barely attend training, and aren't proficient in any skill whatsoever, because they just show up when they want to show up, then I agree, Ken. I'd rather have 10 people that are highly proficient and that care about and that attend the training that's needed and keep up with the skills. But that really is a leadership issue. The chiefs have to buy into the importance of training. And I'll say something else along the lines too, is the chief should participate in the training. It drives me nuts when they stand by the side in their jeans and t-shirt when all the other guys are in full turnout gear and SCBA, and the excuse is, "Oh, I don't have to do it. I'm a chief now." No, that everybody sees that, and that translates down. There's a trickle effect that you can't see from standing there, but everybody in the group hears that. So it's really important to advocate for a solid, good, aggressive training program.
We had to qualify in our department in two areas every year. One was in air packs, SCBAs, and the other was driver training. And I was always qualified. They challenged me one April. We qualified in air packs in April. And I could put, starting with my jacket on, I could put my pack on in 23 seconds. They never challenged me again. But the first person I suspended and terminated was the assistant chief. We had mandatory number of hours. He failed to make his. I suspended him in January. He said, "You can't suspend me. I'm the assistant chief." I said, "Watch." And at the end of January, he didn't come to training, and I went pick his stuff up. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to say it that way, but anyway, the rest of the folks got the message that I wasn't going to tolerate it. They had two choices. They could come to training and follow what I needed, or they'd get rid of me as chief. I didn't care. But if I was going to be the chief, I had certain levels of expectations. And, 36 hours was our minimum, 3 hours a month. Can't give me that. Go coach softball or some other thing. I know this sounds harsh, but sometimes you just have to grow a backbone and run your fire department. It's just untrained people on the fire ground that are from the fire department as spectators. We normally have plenty. We don't need to bring extra. They're there. And another thing you can ask them, are you a firefighter or a member of the fire department? It's a big difference. Enough. I'll get off my soapbox. Get me fired up.
Thank you both for that. Just a quick note, I noticed a few hand raises coming from the audience. So for this webinar, if you could go ahead and just write it in the chat, and we'll get to as many questions as we can today. So there were a couple of questions that were kind of similar. Someone asked about if there are any resources for instructors to share collateral and presentations for fire-related subjects. Some things can't be made public, but could you share within each other? And then someone was asking about the NVFC has a centrally located website. So I would recommend our Volunteer Voices platform for this, primarily as a way to idea share and to, chime in on the similar topic. But do either of you know of any other ways to share collateral and training resources?
Ken, you going to grab that first, or you want me?
Oh, go ahead, Jason.
There aren't that many. It's something we've struggled in Connecticut, is making a resource pool like that available via a website or some other form of media where people can grab off of. It's something that we have to address, and it's something that we've been talking about for years, is providing some sort of platform where 15-minute drills or 20-minute drills or something like that, some sort of presentation-based platform can be shared. So I appreciate the question from Jeffrey. Fortunately for Jeffrey, he's a Connecticut guy, so I'm going to reach out to him separately, and we're going to have a talk about that, because I think that is something that we should be doing at the state level, is providing more platforms for that.
One thing we just started up again, we had it for several years, a state training agency was called Hot Lab. And it comes out monthly to the folks who we have their emails. They subscribe to it. It's free. Just need their email. And it has a selection of drills that we put on each hot lap. So that's an opportunity people can look up and say, oh, this is a hose drill or an SCBA drill or a competency-based drill or whatever. So those are some methods that maybe a state organization, your state firefighter organization may want to host on their website is a selection of drills that can be put up there. And depends on how the platform is set up on those websites, and may be able to hold training programs as well as just quick drills.
I see somebody just mentioned Google Drive, and that's a good option. That's a good option that is easily accessible.
Definitely. So someone has asked, outside of the obvious challenge of doing hands-on style training, do you really see a difference between classroom and virtual learning? And this attendee said that they feel like the virtual learning has helped them attend more and expand their learning.
Since we've really gotten into it, there is some noticeable differences. There's not quite the interaction there is in person as telelearning. It's harder on the instructors. I know the classes I've taught, it's been harder on me because I'm a very interactive instructor. And it's hard to look at 400 people's faces and try to be interactive with all of them. But watching it with the audience the other night, they really enjoyed it more. There's a trade-off in here somewhere. I've heard Maryland, I think MIFRE, had better success rates on their certifications when they started to do telelearning versus in person, particularly on their hazmat ops classes. Their scores went up, and why that is, I don't know. Today's market, in the younger firefighter market, is probably going to be more apt to relate better to telelearning than the more senior members, because they grew up with IT in their hands. So they're going to be much more comfortable with it than some of the more senior members in the fire service.
Yeah, the younger generation now has no problem with handing them a laptop or an iPad and go and watch this course. And we're doing that to some extent with our recruit program here in Connecticut, which is remote for the first month. It's a lot of younger guys, and handing them a laptop was, they turned it on, they typed in a little bit of information, and they were all ready to go. As Ken mentioned, I've been doing some Blackboard and Canvas teaching at college level, and it is a bear for instructors. It's a much harder platform to work with and build a program. So it is very ideally suited to meet some training needs at a time when we can't get together at a firehouse. But as an instructor, you really have to be prepared. There's a lot of preparation that goes into creating material, uploading material to the platform, if that's what you're going to use. And making sure that you're able to still provide a Q&A session. I think, as we use platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and some others, we're all getting better from a moderator standpoint and instructor standpoint at keeping track of people and, catching everybody that raises a hand, or, not having 5 people yell and scream at the same time. We're getting better at managing that. And it is valuable. There are a lot of good stuff you can do. It obviously it doesn't replace the hands-on skills that are still necessary. We still have to plan for those. But if you're going to use those tools as an instructor, it's good to use, but it does take a lot of prep. I've been using Canvas more now than Blackboard. I do tend to like the Canvas platform better. It's a little easier to add materials to and create a few basic quizzes than Blackboard was. But it's still, you've got to put all that information in the system. It's not there for you. And that does take time.
And there's some other platforms out there where you can build test banks and stuff that are provided by vendors that we use as well for specific courses, mostly upper level, but they come in at all different levels. Rachel, I saw a question in chat I'd like to just spend a second on, and it said, how do you work with a safety officer in training? First of all, it's great that they have a safety officer. Sometimes we're not always fortunate enough that we appoint one or we act as a safety officer, as the instructor in charge and safety officer. And it gets to be like being an incident commander and safety officer. There's a lot going on. The safety has a specific function, as does the manager or the leader in the training. Safety should be the eyes and ears for unsafe acts, unsafe events, potential unsafe events, equipment but not being worn properly or used properly. But they shouldn't actually be conducting the drill itself. So safety, as in IC, should management should have the power and authority to also suspend, terminate unsafe activities. They well versed in what the drill is going to be. They should conduct a safety pre-event meeting, going over all of the issues that are brought up. And if they have any questions about that, you should really review 1403, the training officer portion or safety portion of 1403 Live Fire Training. And also you can look into Jones and Bartlett's instructor book, chapters 16 or 17, I think, may have some stuff on that as well. So I hope that helps. I think it was Michael from that was asking me.
Great. Thank you for addressing that. So we have, I think we have time for one more question before we go on to our drawing for the gift cards. So just one note from me is that there have been quite a few excellent membership questions. So I'm happy to see people are interested. I will send out more information in my follow-up email addressing some of these questions and providing you with more contact information. So the last question I want to bring up, I am a new deputy fire chief in charge of training in a rural county service with 5 departments, each wanting to only train at their recommendations and not follow a regionalized training schedule. So how can they encourage participation and working together and buy-in from all the departments?
Have them pick some topics they want to do. Have them pick some areas that they want to focus on. And you might find that in some cases, they align, and that would be a start of a great opportunity to get together.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Jason, the same thing. I served as a chief of training in a small career department for 4 years. First thing I did is I put a survey out to all 3 shifts of what they wanted to train on, and thought I was crazy and that I would never follow it. And lo and behold, everything they put on there is what we went after. Because it's not about what I wanted to train on, what they thought they weren't good at or that they wanted to train on. So if I was in that person's position, if it hadn't been done, I'd probably survey each of the groups and say, what do you want to train on? How can we do this together? And what do we need to train on together if we're going to work effectively as co-responders on the incidents? You know, Jason, you're on point with that too. You and I think a lot alike, partner.
The best job in the fire service is being an advocate for change. It's also the hardest job, but it's one of the most rewarding when you see things that you worked for and developed come together.
I think that is an excellent closing note. So thank you so much for all of your ideas today, and thank you to our participants for the great questions. So I just wanted to share my screen again. So I just wanted to remind everyone that the volunteer voice leadership Can you all hear me?
You're back now.
Oh, okay. I don't know where I went, but I'm glad to be back. I'm going to not show the slide in case that happens again. So I will just say that we do have our Volunteer Voices online members platform where you can continue this conversation. And so with that, I wanted to invite Tanya back up so that we can have the grand finale of the drawings for the 2 gift cards.
Thank you so much for the great information. And Rachel's going to put on on the slide my information. If you need any additional information about California Casualty, please feel free to contact me, and I'll make sure you get the information. So now we're going to pull the 2 lucky winners for today, and we randomized the numbers. So Jason, will you give me a number 2 through 337?
45.
All right. And then Kevin, will you give me a number from 2 to 337?
289.
289. Okay. So we have 45. So hang on. Get to it. Sorry. 45. We have a winner, Craig McGarrity, McGarrity from Washington. He will be the first winner. And the second winner will be all the way down the end. 289. Will be Shane Davis from North Carolina. Thanks again for everything, and we appreciate everything you do for your communities.
Thank you, Miss Tanya. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations to our two winners today. Thank you so much to Tanya and to California Casualty for being an ongoing partner of the NVFC. And so with that, we are going to close for today. When you close out, a survey will pop up, and we ask that you please do give us feedback on this webinar so we can keep enhancing this program. But thank you again all for your time, and stay safe.
Hello, Miss Meg. While you go, I just want to tell you hi.
Hi, Mr. Ken.
We're
All
doing okay down here. We're just fine, thank you. Miss seeing all you guys. So hopefully Cody will make this year.
Yes, hopefully I'll see you in Wyoming.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Miss Rachel.